What's up, guys? On today's episode, we're going to be working on this ridiculous Maserati MC12 Corsa. This is number 6 of 12 in its class. We'll talk about the history. It's a really cool car. But the backstory is, obviously I'm here at Speed Sport Tuning, and Spencer Cox called me and said, hey, we're trying to sell this car. Can you come in and give it a bit of a facelift, but don't do the Larry 50-step detail, that kind of thing? And I said, okay, why? He goes, 1, it's a race car. Number 2, it's very, very thin paint. And there's a little scratches here and there just from pushing the car in and out of the garage and out the pit and the track, that whole thing. So it doesn't need any major work. And of course, we're going to take some pictures of it and try to sell it. I said, no problem. Perfect time to use the new Meguiars product, the M110, which was featured at SEMA. And basically, I'm going to be doing a one-step, which I typically don't do. But in this case, it is the prime example or the perfect car to do a one-step on. Plus, I'm going to be using the new prototype Rupes LHR 21 Mark III. So there's the 1, the 2 that I've always used, and now the 3. We're going to be going over what makes it different, how is it different, how is it better, that kind of thing. So a lot going on in this episode, that and much more coming up on Drive and Protect. All the way in. So they touch on paint on. You can hear it. As I mentioned in the opener, we're doing a quick one-step here because that's what Spencer wants and what the car needs. To watch a full week-long nerding out detailing session for Pebble Beach, click the link above for the McLaren GTR Longtail episode. Before we start the facelift on the MC12, let's take a tour of the car that's not often seen in public. So, in 2004, Maserati wanted to get back into racing after a 37-year hiatus. Their goal was to enter the FIA GT Championship Series. However, this class of racing requires the manufacturer, in this case Maserati, to produce at least 25 road-going or street-legal cars to homologate the race cars, or in other words, qualify the team to enter their car into this series of racing. And because of those class rules, in 2004 and 5, Maserati produced a total of 50 MC12 street cars for about $700,000 each, just so they could race their GT1 race car. Now, in 2006, a year or so after the homologation, customers were demanding a third variant to the MC12 production. So at this point, there were already 50 street cars made and a few factory race cars built, but the track day guys wanted a race version that they could personally own, sort of like a middle of the road between a street car and a factory GT1 race team. This is why the Corsas in blue Victory paint were built, and I'm working on number 6 of 12 ever made for affluent track day junkies. Now, just to give you a little bit of perspective here is a picture of the plushy street interior of the MC12. Here is a full-blown race car interior, and now here is the Corsa's interior, sort of like a hybrid between the two to help you understand its place in the MC12 lineage. Step 1, of course, is to clean the paint with Frothy and some towels. Now, power washing a full-blown race car is not advisable and certainly unnecessary in this case. Our mission here is just to remove the remaining track dust and dirt to avoid introducing any contaminants to our polishing pads later. Next, Joe and I removed the nose of the MC12 with 2 clips on each side and placed the hood in front of the car. Then we removed the engine cover, revealing the 6-liter naturally aspirated mid-engine V12. With the body off the car, we had access to the tight spots to vacuum the rocks and debris out of the chassis without making a mess with compressed air. Notice we're not touching the body of the car, but hovering the vacuum over the rocks to avoid scratches. Next, Dan and I used Frothy again to clean the engine. By the way, look at the air scoops in there. One of my favorite parts of the car. It's so race car, it just makes me happy. We repeated the steps on the front brake ducts, the frame, and the struts, leaving behind a clean finish when the car is eventually inspected by its new owner. Once we were all done cleaning, we wiggled the clamshell back into place on the front and the rear of the car, then began our one-step polish using M110 and the new Rupes Mark III with a microfiber cutting pad. After a few hours of polishing, here are some of my initial thoughts of the new Mark III and how it differs from the original Mark I and the current Mark II. All right, guys, at this point, we cleaned the car. We took both the front and rear lids off and got inside and cleaned everything up. And then we started to polish here and there, and I wanted to stop and kind of really give you my thoughts on these new prototypes here. So I've added the 3 different marks, so Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3. The first one here, the mainstay, it's been around forever. It was the one that kind of defined the large throw machines. Great. Then we made a complete leap in technology, meaning they threw everything out here basically and started fresh with a new platform. And this one was really, really good, right? No problem. When you jump to the 3, my opinion is I'm trying to find an analogy for this. It's like going from an iPhone 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, pick an iPhone. We'll just say iPhone 5 to an iPhone 5S, meaning we didn't go from an iPhone 5 to an iPhone 6 or whatever, right? It's just a bump up. So here are the few things that make it this S line, this S version, if you will. Hopefully that analogy works. So the first thing off the bat is the progressive trigger. I'm not sure if that's what they're calling it, but to me it's like I can control the speed with the trigger, where before, I'm gonna hold this up to the microphone right here, you can hear the on-off switch, listen. So it's off, on, off, on. This one here, you can kind of pull and it's progressive. So to me, that's the most significant change. They put rubber on the tip, on the front here, on the top and the bottom, where before it's just on the bottom. Then they made the actual trigger, you know, just bigger so you can see it, I guess. I'm not sure why, but I can certainly read it from across the room. That's good. And then I think the second most important, at least for me, is when you go to put it down, right? They put the little bump stops on number 2. There's no bump stops over here. So when you put it down, it has a tendency to fall over occasionally. This one has 2 stops. So you put it down and it stays. So to me, that's pretty cool. But ultimately, if I have a Mark II, would I throw it away and go buy a Mark IIs, meaning Mark III? No, I probably wouldn't do that. But if I was in the market to go buy one, a polisher in general, I would just go to the S, obviously, just like you would if you went to the Apple store. The other thing is, I think it's going to be, I have it on good authority, it's going to be anywhere from $10, $15, $20 more. I have no idea, but something like that for the S. And they're coming out in late February, early March. Next, Dan and I corrected the entire car with M110. But here is the test panel we used beforehand to determine or to compare my usual go-to routine of 105, 205 versus the new M110 on this particular car. As you can see under heavy light, the original paint, which is in the middle right here, has lots of love marks from being pushed or moved in and out of the garage, but no major scratches. Now, moving to the next box to the right, we used M105 and a microfiber cutting pad. Notice the love marks are gone, but the typical compounding haze is still present, again, which is totally normal. This would require M205 to finish out properly. The box all the way to the far right, we used 105 and 205, and it looks absolutely perfect as usual. Moving back to the left, notice the M110 looks exactly the same as the 105 and 205 on the far right, and the M110 and M210 on the far left. So in my opinion, on this particular paint, the one step of M110 produced the same or similar results as both the two-step procedures, indicating an increase in its finishing capabilities compared to its predecessor, M105. Finally, just to sort of prove it in real time, but in fast forward, I used 2 dots of M110 on a microfiber cutting pad on speed 2.5 or so for a few passes, and the paint was easily restored. Here it is again under a scan grip light. Now, if you've hung in there this long, you're probably saying, okay, so what's the bottom line here? Now, of course, I put together my little dorky charts to sort of help me explain what I've learned so far. But before then, I know a lot of you are going to be asking about why I was wearing a respirator or dust mask. This one in particular is called Fight Tech. I'll put a link up somewhere. But you can use the 3M6001 or the N95. It doesn't really matter. Just use something that is highly rated and protects your lungs. Here's why. I've talked to a lot of people recently, and it seems like they're getting sick, ill, lungs, coughing, that kind of thing from years of detailing. Now, I respect and love these guys, and so I'm thinking, okay, like what's going on? We need to rethink about, think what we're doing here, because we are using chemicals. We are using, these coatings that are out there. We have to think about what's being ingested, and I'm including myself in this, so I'm having a conversation with myself. I need to be wearing glasses more often, put ear protection, and of course a respirator, which I've sort of committed to my family that I'm going to be doing that going forward. So it's a little bit of a PSA announcement. Just take caution. I'll shoot more videos as I learn more about the health things, but it is very serious. And the part of the reason I'm talking about it is on the bottle and some of the the press release things that I've read, was the goal that Meguiars was doing was sort of minimizing the dust that could potentially, I never really saw it, but could potentially happen with 105. They've eliminated more of it with 110. So kudos, great. And that's what sort of started this conversation, if that helps you with the backstory there. So let's go into this real quick. So my little chart here, it's not, conclusive, but I have more cut, less cut, and again, M100's way over here, heavy abrasives, there's a ton more products, but the goal was to understand the relationship between 105, 205 with the new 110, 210, so that's why I did this chart. So if you have 105, our normal go-to, we've been using it forever, it cuts, and then it stops right here, there's no more cut in this, theory, and then 205 picks up where it leaves off, and then you have a perfect finish over here. Does that sort of make sense? Now, when 110 comes in, what I've seen with the testing is, initially, I was so impressed with the finishing down that I didn't focus so much on the cutting. And I figured, oh, okay, 105 basically cuts more. It cuts more than 110, but 110 finishes off, right, really well. Okay, as I'm coming, I'm working more with this, the product and doing different cars. Again, different paint, different cars, you're going to get a little bit different result. I'm starting to see. So if I were to go right here, draw a line to where M105 cuts like the hard, the heaviest, this gap right here, this is what I find to be the most interesting. And I'm starting to see correlate. I'm starting to see that 110 is cutting equal to 105 in certain situations, and I have to isolate that and understand more before I give total. But total advice. I want you to know that this is the interesting section. If this can cut as much as 105 and finish down, for obvious reasons, I would be taking away one of my workhorses, 105, and replacing it with 110. And basically, I use M100 for the heavy stuff, and then I would be using 110. But again, I'm still working out. We'll have 50 more videos, but that's where my brain is at. It definitely finishes down. There's no arguments here. Check mark there. We're good. So that's why it kind of pushed me to think that it was more of a one-step type product. That's why I'm shooting this video. Now, if you're asking yourself, why is 210 all the way down here? I'm thinking of it more as like this, I don't know, outlier, meaning the few tests that I have done, I haven't done as much as I have 110, so I have a lot more to do here, is more of like finicky paint, Tesla paint, Subaru paint, some weird where you're like pulling your hair out, you can't get 205 to work. This seems to work with less supplemental wetting agent, blowing out like all these crazy things that we have to do to make 205 work. But if you learn 205, like I'm very reluctant to release 205. I can't like get it out of my hand because it's been a workhorse for me for 10 plus years. So I'm really warming up to 110. I haven't given 210 a fair shake yet, and I'll do more videos on that. I just wanted to be honest and let you know where I'm at. But the little bit that I have seen, it does finish down quite nice. I would say more than 205, but I don't think it cuts as much as 205 because sometimes I go straight to 205 when I'm trying to do like this little category here where it's more of a one step. Hopefully I'm not losing you here, but 205 under the right circumstances can be a halfway decent cut as well. You can certainly cut with that and certainly finish down. So this finishes really well. I think 205 cuts a little bit more. So anyways, that was in my head. I know that was a lot of information, but for detailing geeks, I'm sure you're like, okay, I see the landscape. This is by no means correct. This is just what I think, but it's getting there. So hopefully that was helpful.
What's nice about a one-step is pretty obvious. It's not two steps. In other words, it's half the polishing time, more or less. Especially helpful on a car with lots of curves and tons of vents and louvers. Once we're all set with the correction, we added ammo skin to the paint, panel by panel, and removed it within 1 to 2 minutes, leaving behind an intense reflection. Finally, I used Plexus on the Lexan Windows because it's what the manufacturer recommends on these race windows. And just as a random fun fact, both passenger and driver's side Lexan windows were just recently replaced for a mere $3,500 because they had to be custom made, which is completely insane, but it's a race car, so anything goes. Now, the last and probably most important step is to hear the engine on startup, just because it's a Ferrari Enzo V12. So I asked Joe if he could squeeze into the comfy race seat and give us a bit of ear candy.
Well, guys, we're all finished and the car looks absolutely spectacular. Once we finished, I put a layer of ammo skin on it and it's popping and it looks amazing. In the next couple of days, we're actually doing a photo shoot with it. I'll shoot a video on it and post it up. You guys should dig it. I want to do a quick recap here after spending hours and hours and hours with both the Rupes and the new Meguiars product. Here's my final thoughts.
With respect to Meguiars, I think the M110 is a really amazing one-step product. Showed an example back there where we did 105 and 205 and compared all of them, and it was pretty impressive what M110 could do. Now, with respect to the Rupes, again, my favorite aspect of it was the progressive trigger. You can pull it, and the instant you pull it, power is transferred through the machine, where the older version, when you turned it on and off, as soon as you clicked it, you'd have that second delay, and then it would start to go. This one, just a bit more refined, and it's kind of exciting for a geeky guy like me to kind of get in there, and you can control it a little bit more. It's a little more fluid. As always, guys, if you have any questions, you know where to find me. If for some reason you would love to buy a $2.75 million car, contact Spencer from speedsporttuning.net. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.